Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the What Fulfills You podcast. My name is Emily Elizabeth. I'm your host, and today I'm going solo and chatting all about the mindful process in dating, especially in today's dating culture, and how you can improve on this. And the reason why I felt compelled to bring up this topic is because I have been a crazy observer of dating and relationships and how that has played out over the past few years, both in my life as well as a lot of girlfriends and social circles and people who are growing up in this Gen Z end of millennial environment and the dating apps. And, I remember I was talking about it with my old my old therapist from BetterHelp like years ago. And she's, I think, like a little bit more than 15 years older than me. I think she's probably in her early 40s now. But she was telling me how she, kind of cracks up a bit about how we date today versus how things were back then with her and her now husband, and how, when I say we, like I'm talking millennial or in Gen Z, we have like this talking phase, and then we have the exclusive, and then we have, all those things. And what I will admit, I feel like I am a bit of an old soul or traditional soul when it comes to dating, and how I feel like a lot of what I do tends to skew towards maybe the quote unquote old days. I've never been a dating apps person in terms of like being a fan of utilizing it. I certainly played around with it, but I wasn't that wasn't my main way of trying to meet like potential daters. And I think also I've never been a fan of like the whole, are we exclusive? Is it just us? All these different things. And I know that is a very personal preference. I think for me, it probably stems from two things. Number one, the whole, like my like old soul belief of, reading different literature books and like seeing the way things used to be. I think that plays a role. But secondly, I think I've been very fortunate to have had in my past dating experiences, my two boyfriends that I've had, there was never like a talking to exclusive phase. I mean, I think that was, especially my first boyfriend, I was young at the time. I was a freshman and I didn't really know better. I was still somewhat exploring or still having fun. And I think because we were on different pages about that, but I did like him a lot. I just wasn't getting the verbal affirmation of, hey, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Like, I want us to be together. I want us to be dating, that kind of thing. So I remember there was like a pickle about that. But once I knew that from him, that he wanted for us to be in a relationship, that we really liked each other, that we missed each other, that kind of thing. Wow, I just got like a whole visual of like my freshman year and coming over to his old place. Crazy. It was so long ago. That was 8 years ago. But all that to say, that was my dating experience, right? And so because I'm so used to that, obviously I'm going to be biasly like preferring it to be that way too. And I think, of course, there are gentlemen today that are still like that. And this also is like a cultural thing sometimes, where certain people you date from other countries, sometimes that is also their approach, which is pretty monogamous, regardless if they want to be more than anything with you. Like, they're just often kind of like, that's their thing, right? That's just how their culture and their society was. And so I think that has played a role as well, in that a lot of people I've dated in my past often are from different cultures and backgrounds that skew towards being naturally monogamous, and if it goes into a relationship, then it will take a while to get there. But regardless, it's kind of like this mutual understanding of, hey, it's just us type of thing. But regardless, I think there always needs to be communication in that process. And so I do want to chat a little bit about what it means to me to be mindful in the dating process, what I've used over time, and I think I have a good perspective on this primarily because I've had all the variations of dating experiences, from being in a 4-year relationship and having lived with that person. We had a dog together. Like, what I call that relationship, it was pretty much in those 4 years, we had everything but an engagement. And great experience. It was beautiful. And honestly, one of those that really could have been, it had great potential, really, really great potential to be like the one per se. I think it was just that as I grew up in my college years, I realized I was starting to think bigger. I was starting to think about wanting to live beyond California and, explore and see different parts of the US and the world in an ideal world. And I think that was not something that he had in his own innate desire, to expand beyond where he's from in Southern California, and to also expand kind of, beyond the comfort zone. And I think that was definitely a clash in what we wanted for our lives. And I think in general, I was really curious to kind of play bigger, and I would have loved if he was curious as well, but I just think he didn't have it in him, along with other like lack of initiatives that I think is important for a partner of mine to have, because that was from that experience, I knew and saw the friction that comes into play if both myself and my partner don't have that curiosity, or what's that saying? It's like that zest for life, if you will. I'm really adventurous too, so I think all in all, he was a great guy. Just I was going to be a lot, I think, for someone that was very much, as far as I know, like he still lives in his hometown or home city, and that's great, right? But we wanted different things in life, and that's okay, right? And so I had that for about 4 years, and then I had like 3 years of being single. This was from like 22 to 25, where I was just dating. I was enjoying myself. And during this time, I was never closed off to diving into a relationship again. I just knew that I was very open. I was open-minded. I was very open to going on dates and enjoying myself in that process. And I was also very focused on building my post-grad career and just getting that off the ground. So I don't think I was ever specifically looking, but I also was not opposed if that were to come into my life. And so all that to say, what does being mindful mean? In my own words, I would say when it comes to being mindful in the dating process, don't just date to quote unquote to date, right? Take what you know from your past experiences and bring it forward as you are exploring your dating process. So, for example, if you see a behavior or trait that is similar to something you've seen in your past that you know that doesn't align with you, don't lie to yourself and stick around just to see, right? Or to like give them a chance, right? There is a sweet spot in that. I want to preface that, don't cut people off so fast just because you see XYZ red flags. I'm not a fan of, red flag, green flag, all these different things. I think it's just being self-aware of your values, your vision, the values you want your partner to have and to share with him or her, and being mindful of that as you're going into the dating process, right? So if, for example, you value someone or let's say you value loyalty, and that goes with relationships, that goes with friendships, that goes with family, right? Like you are loyal and ride or die for those that mean the most to you and are closest to you. And maybe the person has expressed that they don't feel like that is important or as important as you do, right? Maybe they've expressed that, for example, like maybe they've expressed they think it's great if partners get a hall pass. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it's kind of like saying like, hey, you get like a one-time freebie of like getting to sleep with someone else, whatever, right? Obviously, I'm huge on to each their own. You do you approach life how you want to, because that is your life, but also because that would be misaligned with me. I was speaking my personal experience or preference. I know that I would not stick around to see if that person would change, right? Does that make sense? It really ranges on what that looks like, but I think it's something similar to when you know, similar to the fact that they say when you know you've met someone that is really good for you, really worthwhile, and it also goes vice versa. I think when you know this is just not it, or this is not worth pursuing or seeing through, you also know. And I want to say this to my fellow ladies and the girlfriends listening out there: being respectful to the men. Okay, this is huge. If you didn't feel it after the first date, let's say, and they ask you out again, for the love of God, please just kindly tell them. And you might be saying, well, I don't owe them anything. You don't. Technically, you don't. But I'm a huge believer in treating people how you want to be treated. That is the golden rule, respect, right? And so imagine if you're in the guy's shoes and the roles were reversed. You really liked him and he might not have felt it or whatever. Would you rather have him ghost you, or would you rather have him kindly and respectfully tell you, hey, Emily, I appreciate you following up. I just want to be transparent. I'm not sure if this is the vibe, or I'm not sure if I've been feeling this between us, but I really enjoyed our time together and I wish you all the best. That is kind, respectful, and even if it icks you a bit because it hurts your ego, you're going to respect him long term. And that will be vice versa as well. If you do this and I'm preaching this because I've done this myself and I continue to do this in past experiences, which is if I did not feel it with someone and they are continuing the conversation, I will kindly let them know, because that is just the respectful thing to do. And ghosting is such a cop-out, to not respond to someone because you feel like you don't owe them anything, or you think it's a waste of energy to just respectfully tell them. I just think it's an avoidant mechanism, and one day, sooner or later, it catches up to you. So just remember, treat people how you want to be treated. If you're ever unsure of what to do, just ask yourself what you would want if the roles were reversed. Another part of the being mindful process to me is looking for high quality traits that make sense to you. So this is about you, not what anyone else prefers. So if you are not clear on what traits you are looking for in a partner, whether it's a current one and you need to kind of check in with yourself to make sure you feel aligned with this person, or maybe you are single right now and you're open to dating and you are currently dating, make sure you know what high quality traits you want in this person. I'm personally not a proponent of the quote unquote checklist, or having a checklist of what you want in a person, because I do think that it's nearly impossible to get every single thing on a quote unquote checklist, and some of which I think sometimes can be what holds you back from actually being able to really connect with someone, right? Like, for example, if you say, this, they must have this hair color and they must be this height and they must work in this kind of job and they must, all these different things, you're going to find yourself to be stuck. And at that point, it's not going to be about high quality intrinsic traits, but it's going to be about a lot of external things. And that's not healthy, right? So like I said, knowing what qualities to look for in a partner is going to be so helpful in guiding you in the direction to attract and be surrounded by people like this. And I'll tell you what I've done over the past probably year, or actually no, probably about 3 years now. I've done this where I would start with writing down men that I admire and look up to, in part because of their relationship. So it could be for other reasons too, but it would also, there's a component of I admire this type of guy because of how he treats his wife, his girlfriend, his partner. I'll be honest, I'm a huge fan of Roger Federer. For those of you who don't know him, he is like the GOAT of GOATs in professional tennis. He retired last year, but he is the most respected tennis player of the Open era, and male, particularly male tennis player. And the reason being is for a few reasons. But in the tennis realm, it's because he's one of those players that never had shit on him. Okay, like tennis is one of those sports. It's an individual sport. You can smash your racket when you're angry. You can swear at the umpire. You can do all these different things. But he rarely showed any kind of fluctuating emotions that made people feel some type of way about him. And I hate to say it, but the current number one, Novak Djokovic, who is a phenomenal player, and also during Federer's time, he definitely was not like that and he's definitely matured. I will say that I became more of a fan of him in recent year, but when Roger Federer was still part of the tour, between him, Nadal, and Djokovic, Federer was just kind of like this classy tennis player, this classy man. He's from Switzerland. It's just like everything is to have all of that as a combination, to be number one, to be so great in your sport, to be making that much money, to be handsome, to have a beautiful wife, to have a family, to be that low key and like respected. It's just unheard of. And he's the equivalent of like Tom Brady for football in the US, or Ronaldo in soccer, or I mean football for the rest of the world, or Leo Messi, right? It's like the GOATs of the GOATs. And I will never forget that on his retirement speech at, I think it was like the Lavo Cup, he never fails to thank his wife first, and in the speech he once again did. But this one definitely made me tear up too, because he instantly like thanked her. He said that his career, his success, his life over the past 15-20 years would not be the same without her. And I believe it when he says it, because you can tell the partner that he chose clearly has always looked out for his best interest. In that, I think there are some partners, for example, that could have wanted him to retire sooner, right? Could have wanted him to take a step back from the sport. But from my, obviously, outside observation, I don't know what inside looks like, but outside looking in, it appeared to me that Roger's wife was very adamant about, hey, if this is something you want to continue on with, I'm here to support you. And if you want to throw in the towel and move on from tennis, I'm also here to support you, right? And I think that is so crucial to have in a partner both ways, in that no matter what the person decides to do, that your partner has got your back. And for Roger to recognize that and to acknowledge that to the world about his wife is just, for me, I respect that so much, and I admire that in him as a person, and also as what he is to his partner. But also, I just admire that dynamic. I think it's really awesome that they don't have any kind of tea on them either. How David Beckham, for example, great guy, right? But if you kind of go way back, he does have a little bit of drama that was stirred up way back in the day in regards to infidelity. And of course, I won't ever know if that's like true or not, but I'm just saying it is really impressive for someone like Roger Federer to, with that kind of status, to be able to go through his career and his life and not have those types of things be brought up or questioned about him. And I think that speaks levels. If you're in the public eye like that, and you're able to really maintain your character and morale in such way that no one can even actually try to bring up gossip about it, that's, gotta admit, that's pretty huge. And I'll also share another person that actually wrote two more people down, but one of them is actually, we're more distant friends, but it's someone that I met through a guy that I was once dating. It's a couple, and the husband of the girl, I remember admiring once again how he treats her, how he loves her, how he talks about her, the way he prioritizes her and loves her. And I just remember like being able to observe that in person, and also the way he writes about her in, you know, the birthday messages for her or the anniversary messages. I was just always like, wow, you know. And they would admit like they have a business together and they fight all the time because of it and whatnot, but just to be able to see how this guy treats her like a princess and treats her in such a way that like no matter what, she is first, she comes first, that also rang a bell to me, like, this is something I want. And so to be able to have like visuals and people, both aspirational and both people that I know, to look up to, in the sense of like, this is an example of the type of guy, character wise, that I want to end up with, has been such a great direction, guidance for me to be able to be like, this is the way I want to go. And so something else I did in this activity, I highly recommend for you guys to do this if you haven't tried it before, is to write down the names of men that you admire, ideally both like aspirational people that you know and have kept tabs of their relationship, let's just say, or people that you also like know in person and for real know. That could be like maybe your dad even, or your uncle, or like your friend's dad, whatever, like the way they treat the partner, the way they are as morally. Write that down and write down why. And for me, I wrote down the traits that each person has and how they treat their partners. And I also observed common denominators amongst all three of the names that I wrote down. And I feel like when I wrote that down, it also enabled me to highlight that in my brain, to be like, okay, look out for this, right? Because those will be like easier to spot, in the sense of, I recognize this because this is what I've told myself that I wanted. Or something I've always noticed too is that when you are aware of what these traits are, you become more dialed in to what direction you got to go in. And because of that, you naturally attract those type of people over time, because it's kind of focused in your mind. Like these are, now you've narrowed down what it is. It's kind of like shopping. When you narrow down what kind of shoe you're shopping for, let's say you're shopping for a nude heel, and that heel needs to be at least 2.5 inches, right? If you're shopping online, it narrows down the pool of options. And that's exactly how I have framed it in my mind when it comes to dating, is when you narrow down the type of man that you want to be with, the pool becomes smaller, and it's a lot easier then to select out of that pool, because now you have the foundation set of like, okay, these are the must-haves. This is the standard. So anything else you will repel. And some people, especially in the early days of doing this and getting used to this, you might be like, damn, why are these guys not working out? You'll look back and you'll recognize why they did not work out. It was because they were not aligned with you anyways. That's why you repelled them, right? One of my girlfriends, she's never been in a relationship, but something I've always noticed about her and acknowledged to her is that I find that she's probably the most stoic friend of mine. She kind of doesn't really have like drama. She doesn't pick fights. Like she doesn't have fights with people or arguments. Like I rarely ever have seen her in such conflict. And so one of my theories is, I mean, number one, I don't think she's maybe come across the right guys, but also that's the thing, is when you are dating men that are used to a certain dynamic, right? Let's say other girls that maybe have quote unquote less healthy traits than her, that could be startling for guys. And because they're not used to it, they'll run away, or they'll just be like, oh my God, like this is like, they're not used to it, you know? And there's so much studies on this, or psychological nuances about it, on how just that when you're not used to something, so let's say you're used to toxic behavior or you're accustomed to unhealthy behavior, you learn to accept it. And so when you come across someone that is actually healthy and is good for you, you almost run, because you're like, what the fuck, this is not what I'm used to, and your programming is not accustomed to it, so you leave. And that's why I'm wanted to emphasize, like, you know, you will repel what's not aligned with you, what's right with you. And over time, when you're more firm on those standards and what you want in a partner, that will come forward to you. All right, so let's switch gears into how you can improve your approach. So this is especially for those of you who are dating right now. Maybe you've been single for a while, or you have never had a boyfriend, whatever that looks like. I want to make sure I emphasize that there is nothing wrong with being single. It is an amazing time. It is great to enjoy it. And I think the best position to be in is actually indifference to being single or to being in a relationship. Of course, I think companionship and having someone that you genuinely and deeply love and care for and get to feel the same way from them is an amazing feeling, is certainly better than not having that. But I will say, having had a wide range of experiences in the relationship realm, I'd much rather be on my own and single than to be in a relationship or dynamic where I don't feel like my standards are met. I don't feel like I'm respected. I don't feel like I am treated with a soft and gentle nurturing and love. And these are the things that I personally want, right? So I think the reason why I've been able to get to that indifference level of being like, I can be single and I can also very much welcome a relationship and not be so leaning towards one or the other, is because I've never focused on one or the other. And especially I've never focused on trying to meet someone or trying to date. I've always genuinely just focused on myself. And the catalyst for that was because of that breakup I went through in college that was very life-changing for me. And I think without that experience, I wouldn't be able to sit here and say, you know, I've been focusing on myself and whatever. I think that pushed me to only focus on myself. And later on, I've been able to use it as a strength for me is, you know, in times where I need to readjust, I put the energy solely on myself. And, you know, when I first moved to New York City, I knew I would eventually date and explore that part within the city, but I wasn't immediately hopping on dating apps or seeking out, oh my God, I want to go on a date. I want to meet a guy. Like, I've never been in that kind of mentality. And I talk about this a lot. I've gone out solo a lot. I encourage it, especially if you live in a really fun city. So for me, when I first moved here, I went out by myself and I enjoyed it, like whatever came along with it. And what I personally did, I would go to like this chic bar and lounge. I would go to like restaurants I would love to dine at. Like, I would go on my own. And ironically, I actually ended up meeting my last boyfriend because of this. I met him through one of his close friends. And I met this close friend of his just because I was out by myself. And it was actually at a night where this was like early spring 2022. Yes. So, wow, that's so long ago. But yeah, I remember that night I really wanted to go see this DJ, MK, and most of my friends don't love house music as much as I do, and I certainly wouldn't want to drag friends to go to something if they're not really feeling it. So I remember I was like, oh, I really want to go, and I decided to go by myself. And this friend of my ex-boyfriend, he happened to be involved in like nightlife and whatnot, and so I met him through that and ended up just having a blast, and we became friends, and he would invite me to things, and that's how I met my ex-boyfriend. But I will say, I want to emphasize, like, when it comes to focusing on you, that means do what you enjoy, and the rest will follow. So I have a list of ideas, and they're wide ranging. You know, pottery classes, cooking classes, run clubs, sports and athletic communities, upscale bougie restaurants, piano bars, book clubs. Like, there's so many things that you can do for yourself, and it would be helpful if you're able to bring a girlfriend or do this with one other girlfriend. I think that'd be awesome. But if you don't have anyone in your social circle right now that would be interested in joining you in some of these activities, you got to have the guts to just go by yourself and try it out. And from there, you can also meet girlfriends too, right? You can meet other people. And, you know, if you live in a city like New York, you can imagine if you feel that way, where you feel like you don't have as many like-minded girlfriends yet, or you haven't met just a group of people that you feel like align with the way you think and enjoy the things that you want to do. That probably means that other people feel this way too, right? And that this is also a common problem. So I've always did this, and I have also experienced running into people that end up having these interests as well, and I'm able to at least do those activities with them. So that's why I got back into tennis back in May and started competing again and started like going into leagues and like really being active in it. I started coaching skating last winter because I really needed to get out of myself and give back to something. And so I was putting myself in environments that I've once been in. I knew that there's a lot of alignment with people in those environments, and I felt like if I put myself back out there in those groups, I can slowly meet those people, those types of people again. Another important element to remember is in this process of focusing on yourself, also learn to enjoy your own company. This is very important, and for me has played a significant role in my ability to attract the people that I want to attract in my past dating experiences and also with my current dating dynamic. And why is this important? Why is it important to learn to enjoy your own company? Why has it played a significant role for me? What I've noticed in reflection of this is that when I am secure enough to be on my own and also single, I don't fear or get anxious about whether this will or will not work out with someone. I hear that a lot. People are always trying to predict where this is going to go. And I was once there. In fact, I talked about this with one of my best friends, Elia. This was on my last week living in Los Angeles, and we were talking about this on the beach. And I remember I was trying to figure out where things were going to go with this one guy I was talking to / dating. And this guy riled up my anxieties so much. And I think it was after this guy that I learned how to step into or go towards a secure attachment style. But this guy, he was living in New York. I was living in LA, about to move to New York. And I remember he had ghosted me and done all these different things. And of course, 8 months later, he texted me and followed up like for months before I finally responded back asking him what the fuck he wanted. Was very respectful though in the process. But, I was just like, look, you had your chance, right? You did this whole ghosting thing. And at the time, he was like in his mid 30s or like early mid 30s, right? So I'm just like, okay, you are like, I would hope you would have the maturity to respectfully tell me, why, like whatever, right? But I don't know. All that to say, I remember that I was once in that position before, always trying to figure out, will this go anywhere? Will there be an end date? I was anxious. I was always trying to predict. And now, my God, you guys, huge difference. It's been 2.5 years since. But I am in a state of, being in the present and also following my instincts around, does this person share a similar personal vision in life? Does this person share similar values as me? Does this person uphold these standards on me and for themselves? Like, I'm paying attention to these, right? And I've shared this in past episodes before too around dating and relationships. But the one thing I've learned from my girlfriend, who's about 10 years older than me, and another person I met in a business event, and I picked his brain because I was like, okay, you've been with your partner for over 30 years. Tell me one thing you would tell me, right? Because I'm over 30 years younger than you. And both him and my quote unquote older sister girlfriend, as I call her, they've both shared with me, take it one day at a time. And they would also share from reflection of their past dating experiences and or just why they came to that statement of taking it one day at a time. And it really rung a bell with me, especially in my past anxious self of always trying to figure out where it's going to go. And the first time I saw myself not that way was with my last partner, which was a very emotional experience and for great and for worse. You can't have the best without the worst. But it was the first time I felt very unconditionally loving someone. It was such a fascinating experience to feel that for another human, and then to also feel and see how compassionate and understanding and empathetic I became for him and because of him. And I was very removed from this anxious, like, will this work out? Where this is gonna go? I was just very like, how can I show up as the best human as possible, the most loving, kind human possible to this person and in this dynamic, and of course, after the relationship, right? So to tie it back to enjoying your own companies, because when you get towards being secure, it's always going to be a little bit of a spectrum, but when you get towards being secure, you will also learn to recognize that your life will continue to be great with or without this person. And especially if you've only dated them for, a short period of time. But when you recognize that, you can freely date more. You're not clinging on to that anxiety. And I'm not saying that this is easy to get over, because like I said, I've been in that position before. But I am saying that for me, in order to get towards that secure state, I allowed myself to enjoy my own company. I allowed myself to enjoy time for myself and with myself, which I personally noticed that a lot of women in my age don't actually do that. And that's part of that contributing factor to why some people have the anxious attachment when it comes to relationships, because you're so scared, like, oh, finally I got this guy, I don't want to be alone, so I'm gonna like do everything I can to like hold on to it, right? That's why when you come from a place of I'm full, my cup is full, I fill it up myself, and I'm also very happy to welcome your cup as well, right? Like, does that make sense? You don't want to be too like, oh, I don't need you and I'm not going to invite you into my life, or you also don't want to be like, oh my God, I really, really, really like don't want to lose you, right? You need to find the sweet spot of both. And what worked for me was learning to be comfortable on my own. I'd go to museums by myself, like the Met Museum here in New York. I would go to restaurants. I even went to nightclubs. I have done it all. And so I want to show you guys different examples, the spectrum of variation that you can also test out for yourself, so that you can learn to grow out of that lack of comfort and then get comfortable with it. Sooner or later, it'll be like what I feel. It's like, I can do this with or without another person. And I'm very open to always having a person beside me. But I hope that if I'm going to welcome someone into my life or to be experiencing a journey with me, I really want to pay attention to, do they truly align with me? Because if not, I'm better off experiencing it by myself for now, so that as I'm on that journey and that path, along the way, I will actually meet someone that aligns with me. On that note, when it comes to a secure man, a real secure man, he can also feel that confident energy from you, the calm, secure, grounded energy. And they are often attracted to it. I was told this from guys I've dated in the past, even though it was maybe for like a few months. I remember that was when I started to pick up on it, when they shared that with me, when they shared that this was something they noticed in me that they really was attracted to, they really liked. And to be fair, like, these are also, they were a little bit older too, in their 30s, where I think this was something they were really looking for and were maybe more mindful towards it, because they wanted a mature partner as well, and someone that they could also respect and admire, and we could have that mutual experience. But what I experienced from that is no one plays games when there's true secure people. Everyone is upfront. Everyone communicates towards one another, and whether it works out or not, it just ends up being a very solid, mature experience, and you'll feel that difference. When you enjoy your own company, you don't fear, quote unquote, losing someone in a desperate sense, nor do you feel the need to have someone else lined up on your roster. That one is huge, because I know, okay, at least whether it's you listening, or a girlfriend of yours that does this, but people tend to date multiple people or have this thing called a roster, right? That sounds fun. And honestly, I used to joke about this too when I was like 22, okay? But that's also a coping mechanism, because you fear your ego getting hurt and you're so scared to be alone. And actually, a girlfriend of mine said this at dinner the other night. She literally said, I want and need to practice more, doing more things on my own, because I noticed I can't let go of this guy, despite the fact that I know I actually don't see anything going with him, but I'm not letting him go because I want to have someone else lined up before I drop him. And I'm like, girl, right? It's all ego. It's because you haven't experienced just being on your own. And you're always going to be scared of it until you experience it. You're always going to be scared of heights, or you're always going to be scared of public speaking until you do it over and over and over and over again. And then you realize like, oh shit, it's not as bad as I thought, right? So you have to let yourself experience it. Don't create a roster because you know this deep down, you are filling a hole that you will have to dig yourself out of later on. Okay, so do the work now because you will thank yourself down the road. And the earlier you do this, the sooner you will inch towards being secure in your own company, and you will also attract this too. All right, guys, that was all for today's episode. I really, really hope this was helpful and you enjoyed my solo talk. And if you did, especially if you do enjoy solo episodes, if you don't mind, send me a quick DM and just let me know. Like, hey, Emily, I really enjoyed this episode. I would love if you did more of this, or maybe if you talked about this kind of topic. Tell me, request me what topics you want to hear, especially if you've listened for a while and you feel like you resonate with certain topics that I've shared in the past. Your feedback means a lot. So don't be a stranger. DM me on Instagram at What Fulfills You or at Emily E. Duong. And before you head out, don't forget about the fun, good old card game. If you like a good journal prompt or mindful card games, meaningful questions to play at Friendsgiving coming up, Halloween, if you're listening to this before the Halloween time, definitely order it. It's online at whatfulfillsyou.com. Everything is linked in the show notes, including the promo code. And that is all I have. So thank you again for tuning in today. I would chat with you all in the next one.